Hey everyone, you're listening to my podcast titled Suchitra's Life, and I'm Suchitra. How often do we dare to be vulnerable? We tend to have our guard up, like, firstly, it's in our heads that we keep criticizing ourselves, and over we tell ourselves that we can't be too happy. Culture at work needs to be better than what we see in the streets or on TV. Well, Brene Brown brings in insights from her 2 decades of research around shame and vulnerability and shares with us some behaviors that we can work on. And in her book, Dare to Lead, she talks about daring leadership, which is a collection of 4 skill sets that are teachable, observable, and measurable. Those are rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values, braving trust, and learning to rise. We cannot ask people to be vulnerable by letting go of their guard. We need to strive to build an environment that helps them to do it on their own accord. So let's dive in a little. Why should you read this book? Usually, we aren't that well equipped to be with some of our overwhelming emotions, and being vulnerable becomes an uphill task when you're under a spell of an intense emotion. Brene Brown covers all these aspects in this book, especially if you are a leader and the onus of building a company's culture is in your hands, then this book can be an eye opener for you. It's the first time that I've read her book, and I'm looking forward to reading other books of hers as well. Secondly, what have I learned from this book? I learned that being vulnerable is a work in progress thing. It's the ability to just sit with our difficult emotions. Brene Brown talks about rumble, a word that means let's have a real conversation even if it is tough. And rumbling is not always easy, especially when you are mentally stuck. There are many scenarios that have been discussed in this book which will help you to check in with yourself and do a bit of self-analysis. And just because you're being vulnerable doesn't mean that you have to share everything. Being vulnerable works only when there are strong boundaries, and you're the one who needs to emphasize those boundaries. Lastly, is there any incident that stood out for me in this book? The meticulous research that has been discussed has helped me a lot, and the instances that were shared from people who were trying to be vulnerable was amazing as well. It was so interesting to know their stories and their journey to being more vulnerable. The one incident wherein the author, she had to rush to watch her daughter's sports game but couldn't make it, and the way her friend comforted her with empathy is still etched in my mind. Many times we think we are being empathetic but are not, and Brene Brown also delves deeply into empathy and talks about what does it mean to be an empathetic failure. Also, she urges us to consider feedback from people who are in the arena getting their ass kicked, and not from those who haven't stood up to do anything brave with their lives. Well, this weekend, pick this one and let it make you a little more vulnerable. Until next time, take care.